Tonight in traffic, I watched a girl in the car beside me very clearly getting herself off. Commuters of Reddit, what's the craziest thing you've seen someone do on the road? Saw a guy cook breakfast on his dashboard. He had one of those electric skillets on his dashboard and was cooking pancakes, bacon, and eggs while driving. I want to know this guy. One night at 3 AM, I was driving home with my brother. Out of nowhere, a minivan drove up next to us. Saw that the guy had a TV attachment connected to his windshield. Pretty sure those are illegal. I just thought, okay, that's weird, and kept driving. Suddenly, my brother starts screaming, holy crap, this guy's watching P. The weird part was that he kept driving right next to my car for a good while so we could watch with him. Reminds me of the pornos I've seen where they are banging a girl in a SUV or van with clear windows while driving down a congested highway. Something about watching that was so thrilling. 2 items. Was on the highway doing about 65 when a car passed me in the fast lane. The driver was reading a newspaper in such a way that he could not see the road ahead of him. He would peek over the top of the paper once in a while. Was at a stoplight and the girl in the lane next to me was changing her top. No bra. After she changed she saw that I had been watching, blew me a kiss and waved as she drove off. Sounds a lot like love. When I lived in Boston, I was driving with 3 friends on Starro Drive, parkway that hugs the river, and got stuck in pre-Fenway Red Sox traffic on the way to the game. We were just creeping along behind a green Ford Aerostar van for about 10 minutes before I noticed that they had one of those video monitors built into the ceiling above the rear view. This was a few years ago before dealers were offering these regularly. I noticed the van was completely full, and something was playing on the monitor. I scrunched down out of curiosity and boredom to see what it was, and realized it was a hardcore P with 2 guys DPIing a girl, with a sausage fest of 8 guys all calmly watching this while they waiting out the traffic to get to the ballpark. Upon mentioning this to my friends, all 3 of them scrunched down to get a view of it as well. So now there's 2 carloads of guys watching a porno in traffic. We wind up following the van all the way to Fenway, and they turn into the same parking lot we did. Most awkward staring contest silence ever ensued when we all piled out and headed into the game. I looked over to the car on my left while waiting in traffic, and an older gentleman was driving this very well kept Buick. He looked agitated and angry at the amount of traffic. I could relate to that, I guess. Anyways, he saw me looking at him and just kinda glared at me for 2 minutes. I looked away but I could feel his stare. It was eerie. Anyways, I look back and he has a bottle of pills in his hand. He then eats the entire bottle of pills. I'm stunned at this point. He starts to go a little nuts and then passes out. So here I am, looking at this guy who just offed himself. I'm terrified, and start scrambling for my phone, which is conveniently placed in my crotch, which then leads to me dong punching myself in the scramble. I'm about to call an ambulance when he sits straight up and starts laughing at me. I wonder if this is common because I feel like I've heard about something like this before. When I am old, I will do this every chance I get. I was driving down the freeway the other day, and there was a semi swerving all over the road. I stayed a bit behind him, because his driving was making me nervous. Eventually I worked up the courage to pass him, and there was quite clearly a 3-year-old sitting in the trucker's lap, holding the steering wheel. Saw a woman, traveling at least 65 on the highway, change her entire outfit from her work suit to jeans and a blouse, while steering and never slowing down once. I was late to a wedding 2 hours away and did this going 80 miles per hour. Only I was changing from jeans and a t-shirt to a dress, stockings, heels, and different undergarments. I have only done that once, but I was sure the one time I got in a wreck would be when I was half naked. I never do dumb crap like that. I once saw a girl giving a guy road dome, but she was in the driver's seat. He was trying to steer while they coasted through a residential neighborhood. High five for driving instructors getting roadhead. Driving down the highway once and saw a guy eating a bowl of noodles. I don't mean a dinky thing of instant ramen or whatever. It was an entire restaurant size bowl of soup noodles. The guy was going at it, chopsticks and spoon and everything, while controlling the wheel with his knees. I was once in a car getting a lift to football with a friend and his dad. We stopped at a traffic light and looked in the car next to us. Some guy in the passenger seat in the car over was sat with both fingers up his nose. He noticed we were looking, turned and gave us the most evil grin I've ever seen, took his fingers out of his nose and put them in his mouth. England is fricked up. Ha reminded me of a story. My buddy and I were in a lot of traffic, so I pretend to start blowing him with my hair going up and down. Then I put suntan lotion all over my chin and looked at the car right next to us. Most horrified look on the guy's face and he immediately switched lanes. A friend of mine was in a similar situation. He was driving along and his friend dropped something on the floor of the car on the driver's side, so he bent over to pick it up. Stopped at a traffic light next to a couple of girls. Friend pokes his head up, makes eye contact with the girls in the car across from them, then wipes his mouth with a satisfied expression. There was much horror. I once rolled up to the lights where a man's hands were full holding a cigarette in one hand and a cell phone in the other, so occupied with his phone call he didn't move when the light turned green. The car behind him eventually beeped and gave the man such a fright he threw his cell phone out the window and sped off. And then he stuck the cigarettes in his ear. As a child I was riding in the backseat of my parents' van. It was Christmas Eve, and I saw Santa Claus tying off his arm to shoot up in the back of a cab. Merry Christmas. Oh yeah, right in the childhood. I'm on the bus to college right now. 20 hours of commuting a week. Oh yeah, decided I wanted to join in, looked out the window to spot crazy folk and their motor vehicles. Strangest thing I saw was a woman with approximately 30 rolls of toilet paper on her back seat. Disappointing. One of the weirdest I've seen this year was a van pulling a horse trailer. The horse trailer was full of wood and there was a pony in the backseat of the van. Upvote for getting involved. A couple years ago I was on a road trip with friends, and we used to write signs on paper that said show me your boobs. We'd show the signs to girls in our age bracket, but we'd also try to get truckers and dudes to react. Truckers would actually play along, and they seemed to get a good laugh out of it. Anyway, we see this car filled with chicks. The car is covered with UF stickers, so we're pretty sure we've found the right car. We show the girls the sign and they all flash us. We cheer, but as I'm about to pull away I see that there is a toddler strapped in the back seat. He just looked horrified at what's going on. Oh no, my dinner's getting cold. The best thing I've seen on the road in standstill hour long traffic near Disney World was a car full of quite angry people visibly arguing intensely, pause their argument only to pull out some weed in the bowl, smoke it all together, and proceed to seemingly completely forget what they were arguing about, laugh about and begin rolling down the windows to talk to strangers in the cars next to them, the cars next to them, the cars next. You were in that car, weren't you? I was going to a concert one night, Eric Clapton, with my entire family. My dad is a huge Clapton fan, and as we are approached the city my dad just quietly say what the frick. Now he is not a man that swears a lot, so we all knew there was something seriously amiss. He points over to the car next to us, and I should probably point out we are in a large Yukon, and we all see what is happening. A probably middle-aged woman giving her husband roadhead. We see them just as they finish and she sits back up and looks over to our car. At first she is freaked out and then she just smiles this huge toothy smile, flicks us off, and then they drive past us. This was all in city traffic BTW. Classic Layla. Last week while on the bus I looked over to find a man creeping through traffic, steering with his knee while playing the ukulele. I want to be his friend. I agree that guy sounds like he'd be pretty chill or at least have good pot. One time I was driving and I looked to my left and the guy driving next to me was wearing that horse mask you always see on the internet. He then slowly turned his head and started staring at me. Late at night, see a two-door top-down BMW driving down the highway. Two people in there. Look over to change lanes. Look back. Only one person. Started driving slower. Past the car. Looked over. See a head bobbing up and down. Look at the guy. Made eye contact. Both did the bro nod. And I drove home. Got roadhead in the same spot a few months later. Lucky stretch of road. My ex-girlfriend used to do this. She said the trick is to wear jeans and position that lump of material where the seams come together in just the right spot. She especially liked to do this if I was following her in my car, knowing she was in the car ahead of me having orgasms, and there was nothing I could do about it. Drove me crazy. Not my story, but a story my friend told me. So, my friend and his family, only guys so uncles, dads, some cousins, were going to France as they have a house there. Because they're from England, they decided to, like most English people, drive down to Dover and get a ferry across to Calais. So, they get to Dover and at the pay points kinda like toll booths to get to the ferry. Traffic is backed up for miles due to some problem at the port. At this point, people have been sitting around for like an hour, but the traffic shows no sign of moving. My friend and his family are just talking, pee around, when they realize the car next to them is moving in a strange way. My friend nonchalantly moves nearer to the car to get a look at what was happening. Most people had got out of their cars at this point. He sidles up to the car and sees that the windows are a little steamed up. He peers into the window and there's a couple furiously going at it in the back seat, butt naked, in the middle of thousands of cars and families. So, naturally, my friend knocks on the window whilst everyone around them cheers and makes rude gestures and whatnot. TLDR, the ferry docked in traffic. Till most people are from England. I've masturbated while driving to work many times. I work about an hour and 15 minutes from my home, and all I need is a battery operated vibrator, and vroom, vroom, vroom. I'm envious. I'm going to have to install a piston operated fleshlight in my car to feel confident in my manhood again. Once I saw, driving down the highway at 70 miles per hour, with every seat but the driver's seat filled with piles of clothing, and the woman driving the car actively folding the clothes. I was driving behind some teammates on the way home from a rugby game on the thruway when I see the door of my friend's car open while we're going 80. I then saw my inside center stand up and lean out of the car while our loose head prop was holding onto his belt while driving, and take a pee out the door of the car while going 80, with only a belt keeping him from taking a digger into the pavement. Frickin' rugger boys. Every time. The stories I could tell you, man. Was driving late at night behind a car going weirdly and consistently fast. He'd got his speed limit, then 15 under, then 5 under, then 5 over, and swerving a lot. I thought it might be a drunk driver. We got to a left turn and both were going left. He took 5 seconds after the light went green to turn, and turned very slowly and awkwardly into the far right lane. I went into the left lane and went up next to him to see if he was drunk or dying or whatever and if I needed to call the police. In the process, he swerved into my lane and almost smashed right into me. Dude had a full suitcase in his lap, opened up against the steering wheel, and was sorting through reading papers from it while driving. I rolled down my window and shouted, "What the frick is wrong with you?" He jumps like he'd been sitting in silence and a train drove through his house or something. Startled like freaking crazy, looks over at me, and is breathing really heavily. He slows down and turns onto a side street that I am pretty sure he didn't intend to go down. Kinda think he might have had a heart attack. Kinda hope he had a heart attack. He should not be driving. Jesus. I don't understand why people can't figure out that they're in control of an incredibly freaking dangerous weapon that can very easily kill multiple people. And, no, this is not a good time to read papers, change your outfit, brush your teeth, have sex, sort through your coin collection. It won't be particularly funny if you kill someone. 3-hour daily commuter here. Done that so many times it's amazing I can restrain myself with others in the car. Sent from cell and truck during my refractory period. Once I was drunk in the passenger seat of my friend's car being driven home after a night out. He had a nice, fast car, no patience, and somewhat of a bastard streak to him, so he didn't put up with any crap on the road. He came up on someone in the fast lane going the speed limit, passed him, and then cut him off. The guy took exception, and we began to play freeway frick you at high speed, changing lanes, flipping the bird, riding each other's bumper, etc. Finally, drunken me realized I had a little ammunition in the form of a half-consumed strawberry shake in a sack on the floor, so the next time we passed the guy on the right I took careful, drunken, aim, waited for just the right moment, and heaved the cup past my friend's nose and out the driver's side window at dude. Except the driver's side window was closed. My buddy somehow kept control of his car, reached over and hammered me in the nuts, and spent the rest of the drive home telling me what a stupid frick I was. Everyone involved in your story is a moron. Good story though. I was at a red light next to a guy in Miami a few years ago. We both had our windows down and I noticed a skunky smell coming from his way. I thought to myself, either somebody's having a party or someone forgot to do their shirt laundry. It was the guy next to me blazing up a fatty. He saw me staring at him. All he said was, "Hey Mang, it's not like it's H, Mang." I gave him a thumbs up. Seriously Mang, lighten up. These are stories I've heard from other people. First one, my brother's friend. He had a job where he had to get up before the sun was up and commute for about an hour in a pretty cold state. His car's heater was broken too. So, he got a sleeping bag and cut arm and leg holes in it. So he's rolling down the freeway and falls asleep. It's so snug and warm. He wakes up a few seconds later going over the berm in the middle of the road and coming down the other side, straight into the side of a semi-trailer going the other way. Police arrive. He's hit his head and is way out of it. Still wearing a sleeping bag with arms and legs cut out. The other one is sorta similar, but I heard it from a guy while I was backpacking a few years ago. This guy called Gormo. This man had hundreds of tales of Gormo, spawning the legendary Gormo stories. He had a long commute too and would get bored and start to fall asleep at red lights. To fight this, he took to wanking off to keep his eyes open. Now, you don't want jizz all over your car before you get to work, so he had to have a way to keep it clean. Hence the spunk sock. So, he beat it into the sock every day. He never cleaned it though, and eventually it got so crusty on the inside that while he was driving, he cut his penis on the crust and swerved into a parked car. The ambulance arrives and his penis is bleeding. How do you explain that? Anyway, the craziest thing I've seen is a guy reading a book. It's like, wait a few minutes till your destination, mate. First CM box, and now a penis slashing spunk sock. 2012 is a good year to be a redditor. Start up a subreddit tell us off Gormo and then give me these tales. Spread what you know about this fascinating man. In high school at the time, one weekend I took my current girlfriend to get ice cream. In the car next to us we saw a male driver, no big deal. Not but a few moments later, my history teacher's head came up out of his lap and she wiped her mouth onto her sleeve. Pretty hilarious turn of events for that Monday. In Southern California once, on my way to work around 5:30 am, I saw the guy had a cat in his car. Could see its furry head moving around. No big. Thought it cute. Pulled up next to him, and he was quite clearly watching Gay P. Little DVD player sitting on his dash in front of the passenger seat. He and his cat, watching Gay P on the 605. Read fricking novels rested on the steering wheel like these buttholes are sitting in a doctor's office instead of operating a 5,000-pound hunk of metal careening down a highway. A while back I was turning left in a double left turn lane and saw the driver next to me lighting and hitting a bong while the passenger was steering the wheel. Seriously? If you're going to smoke and drive, could you not wait until you're at least stopped? Or at the very least use a smoking tool that doesn't require you to have your eye line below the steering wheel? One time, while riding my motorcycle, I looked over at the car next to me and noticed the guy was singing Evanescence at the top of his lungs. It sounded beautiful. I followed him and listened to him sing for the next hour. Finally, at a stoplight, I tapped on his window and complimented him on his singing. Guy I know used to do something he called the whack awake. He worked many 15-18 hour days and then had a 60-90 minute commute home. If he felt himself falling asleep, he would pull his dong out and start jerking it to stay awake. He said he was careful to never finish though because he knew that he would fall right asleep if he came. He stopped this practice one cold winter night. He hit some black ice and as his car began to spin out. Most people in a situation like this say that their life flashes before their eyes. He said all that he could think about was that people would find him in the wreckage of his car with his hand on his dong. I was waiting at a set of lights when a souped up 206 classic wannabe boy racer style, pulls up in the lane next to me. It was full of stereotypical chavs and they had hardstyle tunes blasting out ridiculously loud. The driver looked over at me and stared straight into my eyes, as if he intended on starting a drag race. The lights go green, and he slams his foot to the floor, in reverse, smashing into his companion boy racer friends and the car behind. It was glorious. I don't know if it's commonplace, but I, being a female, have masturbated while driving. Where I work, it's a half-hour drive home on the highway. I keep a small egg vibrator in my car for this very reason. That way I never have to take my hands off the steering wheel. Properly placed between the seat and my crotch gives me the ability to squirm against it. There is something exhilarating about going 60 miles an hour while revving your body up to the same speed. I even welcome the attention of fellow drivers. The look on men's faces as they realize what you're doing is a great turn on. If you haven't guessed, I have a small exhibition side. I do try to subdue it if I'm next to a minivan of kids though. Since you, or your account at any rate, seem to be new around here, I'll just take the liberty of informing you of the existence of Wild. One time when I was in the military, a bunch of us were heading to a training site in one of those big vans with like 4 rows of seats. My platoon sergeant was driving and I was in one of the back seats next to the driver's side window dozing off. Out of my peripheral I catch a glimpse of this big truck running right alongside us on my side. I look over and see an incredible sight, but it didn't hit me at first. I turned back facing forward and like 2-3 seconds later I realized what I saw and quickly did a double take. As I glanced back, this rather attractive girl was in the passenger seat of the rig with her bare butt smashed against the glass. She was looking back over her shoulder smiling at me as she spread her backside and pressed her wet love taco against the glass even harder. I immediately yelped "oh goddamn" in shock, which garnered the attention of my squad mates. As the sergeant driving looked over he swerved before catching his composure. Now with the attention of all of us in the van, the young girl starts going to town on herself with her fingers and smears her love juices all over the glass before licking it back off with the most seductive look in her eyes like something out of an 80s rock video. Then she climbs over on the driver's lap and just starts riding the crap out of him, grinding back and forth. Meanwhile he's looking over at us with the biggest freaking smile imaginable. This show went on for several miles, before we finally realized this was a massive crash waiting to happen. 10/10 would read again. I was driving to work and came upon some heavy traffic. I really had to pee so I was fidgeting around and gripping my steering wheel really tight. It didn't help that 3 guys were staring at me like a savory piece of bacon for about 5 minutes. I'll take the inverse here. I was driving to Detroit from Cleveland by way of the Ohio Turnpike at 3 AM. No one on the road but myself. Pitch black outside. I'm wide awake doing 75. And I just feel that feeling you get when you're listening to the Pixies and Kim Deal starts signing. So I grab a trusty sock from my duffel bag in the passenger seat and have a go of it at 75 miles per hour. I was about a mile away from the toll booth when I wrapped things up, and only barely. Truly the craziest thing I've ever done in a car. Was driving near San Jose, CA, and happened to look over at a fairly attractive Asian girl driving next to me. She seems to know I'm looking at her, but she suddenly starts making strange faces. Just then a male lifts his head from her lap in the driver's seat, makes some sort of readjustment, then heads back down to the nethers as she moves her chair slightly back. One night, I was driving home around 2 AM from a buddy's house. As I pulled up to a stoplight, I saw a guy just plowing this woman from behind as she leaned against a newspaper stand. She looked over at my car, obviously wasted, and held up a newspaper like she found something interesting to read. She clearly didn't think about how good of a disguise that was. Meanwhile, Jethro is still in full gear and notices nothing. Memorable experience. This is my uncle's story and it's pretty good. Sometime in his 20s he was making a road trip to see the dead or something. Late 80s, early 90s. I don't know, he was a hippie. Normally hippies are fun-loving, laid back, and easygoing, which my uncle is most of the time, but he can also get worked up really easily, and road rage has always been his easiest set off from my experience. So he driving in this jackout in a convertible BMW starts riding his butt. The kind of person that had a pink popped collared Lacoste shirt and thought he was king and probably fricked with dudes with long hair. an overworn Grateful Dead shirt and an unkept beard just for fun. Anyway, he goes to change lanes to let the guy go by, but the dude kept tailing him and flashing his brights just to frick with him. It was about that time he realized that being in a Wrangler with the top off and a McDonald's cup halfway full of dip spit gave him the advantage. My uncle claimed he just wanted to hit the front of his car to get him to back off, but it was a perfect toss with a perfect trajectory and made contact with the very top of the windshield, causing an explosion of dip spit right in this dude's face. The guy backed off. As a teenager, I distinctly remember going on a road trip somewhere and we happened to pass a guy driving down the highway with a penthouse, or something, on his steering wheel. I'm fairly certain he wasn't masturbating, just getting a good look while he was on his commute. To this day I kind of feel bad for the guy who clearly only had the opportunity to get a peek at pee while he was commuting. I've fapped it in the car. The difference was that it was nighttime on an empty road. Also no throwaway. I want people to know. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.